plucked up my courage. I went to where the Pope was having his lunch. I expected a glare from him. He looked up at me kindly and said, "Please pray for me." Initially, I thought it was a twist of fate, but I'm convinced it was part of a larger divine intervention.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Mothership Help Desk. I'm your host Drew, and as always, I'm joined by Pris and Alfie. And full disclosure, we're recording this after we've had Mr. Yeo on. I think it was a really interesting episode. What did you guys think?
Something to look forward to. You just have to keep watching.
Lots of pearls of wisdom.
Yes.
Very philosophical, very, very zen. Yeah, I think it's clearly like a deep, deep thinker.
Actually, I like the part where he's talking about if you're in a small space, you can find. Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting because you tend to just focus on everything bad, the situation. But I mean, it's not something you need to be reminded of. But the way he put it, I was like, it made quite a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But you guys will only know that when you watch the video.
Yeah, you have to watch the whole episode to get it. No, but there are so many things he said that I feel like you can go away and think about it a bit more and gain even more wisdom from it. So honestly, I thought it was a really interesting and really fun episode.
It made me think about my own life actually. I feel like
I'm living. Just having
as he was talking, I was just like, my life is so superficial because I mean, literally, we're in Singapore. Everything is very, very crafted, very it's really put together for you, and there's very little opportunities for genuinity. So it really makes me wow, I need to travel and figure life out and start to look things in a different lens. Because I mean, if you're just gonna travel with I'm just gonna go to this place just to see here and there, but there's so much more to it.
The travel stuff was really fun, and to hear just his perspective on travel and where he likes to go. But speaking of genuinity, do you know what I genuinely love? The delicious icy treats of Misha since 1997.
Wow.
Just had to give. You know what? I feel like we mentioned Misha more than our real sponsors. Scanteak, great furniture. Thank you so much, Scanteak. Thank you. Okay, but before people get to the episode, right, it's a bit of a different one. We obviously have him on because the Pope is in Singapore. So we spend the first few minutes asking him about the Pope. But don't worry, hang in there because after that we get to your advice questions. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Okay, my guest today was formerly a minister in Singapore's cabinet, serving across various portfolios like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and the old Ministry of Information, Communications and the Arts. But this week, with the Pope in Singapore, we thought it was a great opportunity to get him in because I dare say that just maybe no other Singaporean has met with the Holy Father as much as this man. Thank you so much for coming on to Help Desk, Mr. Yeo.
Hi, I got to be here.
Would you say it's true? Do you think you are the Singaporean who has met with Pope Francis the most?
I'm not sure, but I must have been to the Vatican maybe 40 plus times.
Whoa, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I don't really work directly under the Pope. I was appointed by him.
Yeah.
We met him from time to time when there were things to discuss between the commission or committee I was member of and him.
Yeah.
But I stayed whenever I was in the Vatican in the dormitory where he lives, and we eat in the same canteen.
Wow.
So we do see him every time, but we don't go up to him to say hello or whatever. Kind of treat him as we would a senior officer in a SAF camp.
Yeah. Okay, so you said SAF camp. SAF cookhouse food versus Vatican dormitory canteen. Which is better?
Well, in my time, SAF cookhouse food wasn't well known for being good. It was good only when there were important visitors.
Yeah.
But today I hear it's much better.
Okay.
But in the Domus Santa Marta, which is the special dormitory built for visiting senior clerics like cardinals, the food was good. Simple, not fancy, but good Italian food.
Yeah.
And every meal there will be a bottle of red wine, a bottle of white wine, cheap wines, but completely serviceable. Cheese flakes to scatter onto your pasta.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the meals there.
What was your favorite meal at the canteen?
Oh, I can't say because it varies every day.
Too many.
Yeah, but I like the way they chop up the salad greens so that you don't have it all over your mouth. At lunch, you are served. At dinner, leftovers from lunch plus additional dishes will be on the buffet table. And we go up there to help ourselves. And sometimes the Holy Father will be there to help himself. So you just queue up.
From the same buffet queue that everyone else is
Yes,
going to.
he ate the same food.
Wow.
But rumors had it that his orange juice was freshly squeezed. I wasn't able to verify that.
You didn't ask him to like, hey, can I have a taste of your orange juice or anything like that?
No, he sat at a table on the side.
Yeah.
He never dined alone. There were always others with him. And we don't disturb him, you know. I mean, when he comes in, you know, the volume of conversation will go down.
Yeah.
And furtive glances looking in this direction and kind of following him to where he sat down. Then when he left, the same thing happened again. and then when he's out, then the volume of conversation will go up again.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the time when the SAF had officers' messes. And when I was in Tangling, when the minister came in, people spoke more softly. And the minister left, the volume will go up again. There was one occasion when my wife asked me to get some rosaries and have them blessed by the Holy Father.
Yeah.
You know, Singaporeans think that the Holy Father was there waiting to bless rosaries. It gave me a lot of stress.
Yeah,
I couldn't say
yeah.
no to my wife. So I bought 50 rosaries or 20 rosaries in the shop, the Vatican shop.
Yeah.
And waited for the opportunity to ask the Pope to bless the rosaries. But I couldn't interrupt him during a meal. And what do I do? So I was discussing this with some of the cardinals whom I sat with up at lunchtime.
Yeah.
They knew I was under stress, so one of them nudged me and said, "Go!" So I plucked up my courage. I went to where the Pope was having his lunch.
What, he was by himself?
No, with two or three other people.
Okay.
I said, "Holy Father, I'm not sure if I blame my wife." But I said, I probably did. I said, my wife asked me to have these rosaries blessed by you. I expected a glare from him, but not at all. He looked at me, he looked down, he prayed, he blessed the rosaries. He looked up at me kindly and said, "Please pray for me."
Yeah.
I do not know how I look, but whatever I look caused him to repeat, "Please pray for me. Remember." I said, "Yes, of course, Holy Father." So he doubted in my first reaction whether I would.
Yeah.
Subsequently, I told my wife, to everyone she gave the rosary, please remind him or her to pray for the Holy Father.
Yeah.
If necessary, say it twice.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting slightly ahead of ourselves, but before we get into, before we ask you more questions about the Pope, I think first you need to explain, how did you come to this arrangement that you were, in the Vatican so many times and being able to walk up to the Pope at lunch to ask him for things?
By a strange twist of fate or by the working of the Holy Spirit. One day, my wife said our local bishop wanted my phone number and gave it to him. So as I was driving to Changi Village, one day, suddenly I received a call from the bishop. He says, "George, can I give your mobile number to another bishop?" I said, "To whom?" He said, "Oh, I can't tell you." So I scratched my head. That's very odd. You asked me for permission to give the phone number to someone whose name you will not tell me. But since he was my bishop, I said, "Of course, Bishop." And he did. Maybe a week or two later, I received a phone call from Cardinal George Pell of Sydney. I said, I've not heard him. I didn't know him from Adam.
Yeah.
So I said, Cardinal Dell? He said, "No, Pell, P for potato." I said, oh, hello, Cardinal. And they said he was forming, on the Pope's instruction, a commission to look at administrative reform of the Vatican.
Okay.
This must have been in June or July 2013. The Pope became Pope in March. So I said, may I have the paper and can I have a week to think about it? He says, I'm sorry, we don't have a paper. I've told you all that I know about this commission, and you don't have a week because we are making the announcement next Wednesday. Can you tell me before the end of the week? So I put on the phone. I called up my wife, who was at that time, I think, with her mother and one of my sons vacationing in Europe. She chatted me. She said, of course you have to accept. How can you not accept? I said, which was what I felt anyway.
Yeah.
I then decided, I needed permission because it would require me to travel every month to the Vatican, every month. And so I asked Robert Kwok, my boss at the time, for his blessing, which he gave immediately. And my first meeting was in August 2013. There were 8 of us. No one I recognized. I thought initially it would be former politicians.
Yeah.
No, they were all either accountants, auditors, or consultants.
Okay.
And all Europeans. I was the only non-European.
Yeah.
So for them, it was a short hop to Rome. But for me, it was long distance, either from Singapore or from Hong Kong on an overnight flight.
Yeah.
I didn't want to probe how I was asked because I was never active in the local diocese. And Singapore has a small Catholic population, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to ask. I thought it was wrong to probe. But about 2 years later, I found out what happened. Apparently, the Pope asked the Cardinal, told the Cardinal, I want a Chinese
Oh, okay.
on the commission.
Yeah.
And Cardinal George Yeo, he had looked for a Chinese. He asked a friend of his, Greg Sheridan, a senior writer or editor in the Australian, whom I've known for many years. His wife is Malaysian. We got along well. He told the Cardinal, well, George has lost the elections, he's available. He proclaims himself a Catholic. Maybe ask him. And the Vatican, in its usual way, did background checks that I was not a bigamist, that I didn't have some strange secret life.
You weren't secretly a Lutheran or something like that. That would have upset them.
Well, later on, when my CV came up, it was cut and paste job. And it was clear that they had asked someone, a senior cleric, whom I had met before. So they were quite careful.
Okay. Yeah.
And why did the Pope want the Chinese? He's a Jesuit. He knew the history about how the early Jesuits, like Matteo Ricci, went to China to evangelize. Scholars who mastered the Chinese language, delved deep into his philosophy, discussed philosophy and religion with very educated and erudite Chinese Mandarins, and in the hope that they could bring Christianity and Catholicism into China. So when Matteo Ricci had to translate Deus, God, into Chinese, it was not easy. Francis Xavier, who went there earlier, found a word which turned out to be the name of a minor Japanese deity. But Matteo Ricci, before deciding how to translate God, went deep into Chinese philosophy. The Chinese believed that all men are brothers. So there's a Tian, there's a Tianxia, and the emperor is Tianzi. And he governs by the will of heaven, Tianming. Tianming. So he translated God as Tianzu.
Okay.
Until today, in Chinese, the Catholic religion is Tianzu Jiao. It came from Matteo Ricci. So the Pope knew this history.
I see.
But evangelizing China wasn't easy. They were happy when the Manchus took over because they thought the Manchus would be more open to Christianity. But whoever governed China had to govern according to the necessities of China, which means if a religion comes in, it has to be sinicized. If you take Buddhism, we all know Buddha was Indian, that Guanyin Avalokiteshvara was Indian. But emotionally, the Chinese think of Buddha as Chinese, of Avalokiteshvara, of Guanyin, as Chinese. So eventually, for Christianity to take root in China, the Chinese people must feel that Jesus, Mary, Joseph, the apostles are all Chinese. And indeed, if you look at the catechism books produced by the Jesuits in the 16th, 17th centuries, they have illustrations of Jesus, Mary, Joseph, the apostles, all as Chinese.
Okay.
It was only later, in the 19th century, when the Europeans had guns and gunboats, that Jesus, Mary, Joseph became Europeans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in Singapore today, when you go to the churches, they're all presented as Europeans. But in China today, there is a move to present these holy figures as Chinese. I just came back from Shantou. My mother grew up in Tao'an, and my father's father came from there. So I go there quite often.
Yeah.
And this time round, I decided to call on the local bishop, Huang Bingzhang. And I attended Mass, and he brought me to the new cathedral, huge new cathedral being built. And this cathedral will be dedicated to Our Lady, Mother of China.
Okay.
中国天母. And the main image they use is of Mary carrying the child Jesus as Chinese.
The child Jesus is Chinese.
Yes, as a Chinese emperor.
Yeah.
Ming style.
Okay.
It's an old portrait. So this is Sinicization,
Yeah.
which the Communist Party wants and which Pope Francis supports, because God has to emerge from our deep identity. When the Pope met Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh,
Yeah.
he told them, God is Rohingya. There's only one image of the Virgin Mary among all her apparitions on earth,
Yeah.
which is Guadalupe. Very important to me and my wife because we believe that she helped save my wife from her cancer.
Yeah.
In that image, the Virgin Mary appeared as a mestiza, as a local, not as a European. I often tell Chinese audiences that God is Chinese. He has to be Chinese because we are created in His image. So this desire by the Pope to have a Chinese on a commission reflected not just a whim, but something profound, something which he prays about every day, which is reconciliation between the Vatican and China, so that evangelization can take place within Chinese culture and civilization.
Yeah.
And so somehow I was asked. See, it wasn't just a random event. So initially I thought it was a twist of fate, but I'm convinced it was part of a larger divine intention that we are somehow plugged and put into a flow, to a much larger flow.
Wow. Wow. Very philosophical. Very profound.
Yes.
Yeah. What was it like interacting with the Pope? I mean, you had that story about when you asked him to bless the rosaries, but what was he like in private?
Well, unlike many other popes,
Yeah.
he speaks only Italian, which he was originally, and Spanish, because he's Argentinian. He probably understands English, but he can't converse in English beyond a few pleasantries.
Yeah.
So when he addresses, he was always through an interpreter.
Oh, okay.
But when you meet him, then he would just exchange a few words in English. But I don't think he's conversant in English.
Okay.
I may be wrong, but that was my impression.
Yeah. And Alfie has a question that she wants to ask you. I know she's quite nervous about it. So if you could humor Alfie's question, go on, Alfie. Come on, please.
It's the Pope has a ring, and there's always movies about how people want to try and steal the ring. Have you seen the ring, and like is it as wild as it is like in the movies?
Well,
It lasts for a while.
I know he has a ring. All bishops have rings.
Yeah.
And conservative Catholics may kiss the ring because it may contain some holy relic. It's considered something sacred. I never do that. And I don't kind of glare and try to look at the ring. But I'm sure you can find it on the internet.
Yeah, it's
somewhere.
like gold, like
As to reports about people trying to steal it, I have no idea.
You were not tempted. You were not tempted at all. Did you keep any souvenirs from all the trips that you took to the Vatican?
All the documents had to be destroyed or returned.
Oh, okay.
It's part of the Vatican discipline.
Yeah.
They're kept in the archives. And the Vatican archives are a very important repository of information. I do keep a few souvenir objects. From time to time, they'll give us a Vatican euro.
Okay.
And they'll say, because the Vatican has the right to issue coins.
Yeah.
It's not big enough to issue notes, but issues coins.
There's a mint in the Vatican?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But it's the usual euro coin, but on one side, it reflects the member country.
Yeah.
And the Vatican is entitled to have a few issued in its. It's not part of the EU, but it's within Italy.
Yeah.
And these are given as gifts. So the priest who gave it to us said, well, it's only €1, but it's worth much more than that. so these I might have 2 or 3 of them. So I keep them just as a memento. Some holy pictures. And in the course of my having met the 3 popes, I had a few rosaries given to me by the Pope. But over time, I decided, no, it's more, I shouldn't be hoarding them. So when there's something important or someone who needs it, I give it to that person.
Wow, okay.
So there was a bishop of Shanghai. He was just ordained a bishop, and then he spoke up against the Patriotic Association. Well, indirectly. And the Chinese government removed him. And he was in the seminary of Sheshan in Shanghai. I was at the seminary, but it's a huge complex, but he wasn't there. So the priest who accompanied me, to him I said, look, I have a rosary from the Pope. Please give it to Bishop Ma so that he knows we're thinking of him.
Yeah.
I now take this attitude that if there is a precious religious objects, I shouldn't be hoarding them.
Yeah.
Or just reserving them for my family. But if someone needs it, please have it.
Okay, so for our viewers who might not know what the Pope is or like who the Pope is, what's the significance of him coming to Singapore, and why is it such a big thing that he's coming to Singapore?
Well, for all countries, papal visits are a big affair because his constituency is the entire world. And usually by the time you become Pope, you're already fairly advanced in age, so you're not likely to visit a country more than once. So people treasure these visits. And he's seen as a moral authority, particularly this Pope, who has worked very hard to reach out to people of other religions, especially the Muslims. When I was appointed to the Papal Commission, my Muslim friends congratulated me. 1 or 2 even asked me to pray for their families in St. Peter's. There are very warm feelings for the Pope in Singapore, not just among Christians, but also among Buddhists and Muslims. The Pope has visited many Buddhist countries, and he has appointed cardinals from every country in ASEAN, including Brunei and Laos. Some of them have died, a few were over 80 years old, which meant they were not electors. But he has trod wide for new cardinals. Remember, cardinals below the age of 80 are electors when the Pope dies and the new Pope has got to be found. And by spreading the college wide, is in fact loading the dice on who will be the next Pope. But of course, he prays about it, and he needs to choose people who mean well, because every Pope is different. Every Pope sets the church on a different direction. And this Pope responded to fragmentation in the world today, where people are at each other's throats, by reminding everyone that we're all human beings, we're one Father, and therefore we're all brothers and sisters. And whatever our disagreements, our differences, never forget that.
So, I mean, he's coming to Singapore, which is, like you mentioned, a relatively small amount of our country are Catholics. Should we expect to see him do like inter-religious stuff with like the other religious leaders and things like that?
Yes, I think there will be a special session at Catholic Junior College on interreligious experiences. There'll be no state dinner because he doesn't like state dinners. When he was in the US, he said, no, I'm not having a state dinner. I'm going to eat with the poor. No big cars. And he will not be staying in a 5-star hotel. So this is Vatican policy during his pontificate.
Okay.
That's his wish. He himself, you look at him, he's always looking somewhat frumpy. I mean, but well, Jesus Christ, I mean, was not dressed elegantly. Yeah, I mean, there's a message there. He often says, the good shepherd must smell of his sheep. If you're all elegant and perfumed, you can't be a good shepherd. You have to be with the sheep. And wherever he goes, he makes it a point. He does what is necessary. I mean, I'm sure he'll meet the president and prime minister, and there'll be a talk at NUS, which will be hosted by President Taman. But the main event will be the big mass at the sports stadium.
Yeah.
It's already overbooked.
Are you going for the big mass? I'm sure you are.
My wife and I have been invited.
Yes.
I'm not sure why, but I think it's because I worked under the Holy Father before. My mother-in-law, because she's elderly, she gets a ticket automatically with my younger son as caregiver.
Yeah.
But I hear that many people have balloted and failed.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But no scalping.
Yeah. I mean, if you would excuse the analogy, I suppose this is similar to like when Taylor Swift came to Singapore. I don't know if you're aware of that series of concerts. So the Pope is like to Catholics what Taylor Swift is like to young girls, I suppose. Is that an accurate way to describe it?
That sounds a little blasphemous.
Oh, yeah, sorry, my bad.
Yeah. But I suppose there are similarities. The location is the same. The crowd will be of the same size. But the message is profoundly different.
Yeah. And what happens at a mass for those who are unaware?
Oh, the mass reenacts the Last Supper when Jesus Christ consecrated bread and wine into his body and blood. We believe that it is transubstantiation, not just symbolic, and that is very important. It's a mystery of faith. And masses said anywhere in the world by priests are equally valid. It creates a very curious Catholic culture. When I went to South America for the first time for my honeymoon in 1984, I felt strangely at home because of Catholic culture. Mm-hmm. My wife at that time was not yet a Catholic, she was Anglican. She found the images, the processions a bit off-putting. But for me, I grew up with them, and it's the same religion, it's the same valid mass, which I could attend as if I'm a full member. I could attend mass in Germany or in Vietnam or in Tahiti. It's still the same mass. I may not understand the language, but I know what are the prayers being said because it's the same liturgy. The Catholic Church has a large congregation of maybe 1.4 billion people, maybe China's population, but it's scattered and it's extremely diverse. Its unity is maintained by careful appointment of bishops, regulation of religious life, the liturgy, and the sacraments. So some things are held very tight. You have no flexibility. Other things are very loose.
And he'll also give like a homily or like a sermon during his mass here in Singapore, or just the communion.
No, he'll celebrate mass. It'll be celebrated by many others within Singapore and from the region. I'm sure he'll say something. I don't know. I'm not directly involved.
I see. Okay.
From time to time, people ask me, what do I think? Do I have views? Which I offer indirectly. But I attended the papal mass in 1985 when Pope John Paul II came.
Yeah.
It was also at the stadium, but at that time, it was open air, right? It was raining while we were waiting for the Pope. And the rain was getting heavier and heavier. I remember the nuns on stage asked us to say the Hail Mary. And the more we say the Hail Mary, the heavier it rained. It really tested our faith. But by the time the Pope arrived, it was clear. And the evening was crystalline.
Oh.
It was beautiful. So I have a sense of the last papal mass. I think the coming one would not be too different. I've attended canonization ceremonies at St. Peter's before. So I know what the big church event looks like. It'll be an experience, an unforgettable experience.
Awesome.
And we don't expect the Holy Father to visit Singapore a second time.
One last question before we move on to the advice questions that the audience have submitted. For those who are not Catholic, why should they care about this visit from the Pope?
It's entirely up to them. If they feel moved by this individual, then care. But if you don't. But I think many will be interested in one way or another, including Muslims and Buddhists.
Okay, so before we get to the questions that you guys have submitted, if you have something that you need advice on, you can write to us at the link that is on the screen right now, or you can find that exact same link in our show description. Mr. Yeo, are you ready for the first question submitted by our audience?
I'm so nervous.
You shouldn't be. Okay, this one is from corporate. This one is from someone using the pseudonym Corporate Slave. And Corporate Slave asks, there's a new team lead in the office and he is super micromanagey. I'm very sad, please help. How would you deal with a micromanagey boss? Have you had a micromanagey boss over the years that you've worked? Or are you a micromanagey boss, Mr.
I'm
Yeo?
certainly not a micromanagey boss. No, I never had a micromanagey boss. In government or in the SCF. Well, maybe when I was a recruit in BMT, then we had micromanagey commanders and sergeants and so on. In BMT and in OCS. But for higher courses, like staff college, no, we had a lot of flexibility. And I don't think I can stand a micromanaging boss.
Yeah.
And if I'm confronted with one, I think I'll probably find another job.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So your advice to corporate slave? You were in corporate slave's shoes. You would just quit.
Well, I shouldn't be too flippant because you may need the job for livelihood, so you may have to accept it. But it's very important to understand your boss, and if the boss is micromanaging, it reflects some obsessions or some insecurities. And maybe you can address those to make that boss less micromanaging. Because he distrusts you, because something has happened, something you said, some habit you have, some preoccupations he might have.
Yeah.
So if you understand your boss, it always helps. If you understand your boss's boss, you'll be better able to understand your boss's obsessions and therefore to manage him or her.
Yeah.
But you require a kind of a superior mind to be able to understand your boss's boss and your boss's boss's boss.
You need to be able to play 4-dimensional chess.
If you can do that, then you have a lot of freedom because you understand the necessities.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you think that in a small space, I can't move. Well, but actually, even a small space, you can find freedom. So those who say, no, I don't want to be managed, in the end, they're imprisoned by a large space. Now, I'm paraphrasing Pope Francis.
Yeah.
He says, do not be imprisoned by a large space and find freedom in a small space. So for those who feel trapped, let's say you're in prison, or you're in a wheelchair, you're bedridden, you suffer some infirmity, you can still find freedom under those conditions. But it requires a change of attitude.
Yeah.
An ant has freedom, an eagle has freedom, a pet dog has freedom, but each is trapped in a particular environment, in a certain situation. All of us are. In the different stages of our lives, the space can be bigger or smaller. Understand it.
Have you ever felt like you were like trapped during your different careers throughout your life? Like have you ever been like a similar situation? Not the micromanaging part, but maybe like feeling trapped in like a job.
Oh yes, very often you are caught in situations where decisions are taken which you do not agree with, but which you have to accept because it's part of the discipline of an organization. Then you say, what do? Do you complain? Do you try to be constructive? Even if the attitude is positive, if you know that the intentions are good, not bad. If it's bad, then don't be part of it. But if the intentions are good, but the judgment is different, accept it in humility, but find even within it a way to express your own initiative and ideas. And if you think hard enough and detach yourself from yourself, you can contribute, you can stay positive.
Right.
But if you are chafing and you're complaining, you're angry, and you become negative and destructive, you contribute to a negative 气场, negative 气 feel. And that's bad for everybody and very bad for yourself.
Right. And for yourself, you say you don't like a micromanaging boss. I personally prefer someone who manages me a bit more.
Really?
I just talked to you yesterday about this.
True. Yeah.
So Drew is actually my ex-boss. And I mean, we still work together, but he was my ex-supervisor. And like, he's so not super like hard on me on
not
things.
a micromanager.
Yeah, but I told him yesterday that like I wouldn't mind if my supervisor kind of like looks over me and like kind of monitors. Like, I'm personally okay, but some people just can't stand it. So like, what kind of supervisor do you prefer if you had a choice?
No, it depends on your own nature and your own set of circumstances. If you're in a new place, you want to be guided. But once you know that space, you want more freedom.
True.
So it's not one state. It depends on the progression. It depends on whom you're with and your existing stock of knowledge. What do you want? In the end, you want your life to be abundant. You want to be fulfilled. You want to be able to create, to feel agency and autonomy. That's what you want. But of course, you don't want to fall over a cliff. You don't want to step into a hole. You don't want to get burned by something hot, which you did not know was hot. So you need, wherever you are, however brilliant, you need others. You need knowledge. You may disdain the peon or the watchman, but in fact, they know a lot. They see a lot. And they can warn you, they can advise you. If you are proud and you think you know-all, you will fall. I mean, you walk into a hole. But if you are prepared to listen and understand what others know, it's a good thing. I mean, how can it be a bad thing to know more? And in any situation, in any work, in any task, we know so little. We know only a fraction of what needs to be known. And that knowledge resides in everybody. So having a network makes you powerful. If you're a computer, solo computer, you're just one phone. Well, it may be a phone call. But if you're a smartphone and you are on the cloud, in a network, it sings. It's the same with human being.
Right.
And all these experiences that you've had and all these life lessons that you've learned, I'm pretty sure it comes with all your the life careers that you've had. So I'm pretty sure there was a transition between working for the leader of a country and also the leader of a religion. So how is that different from each other? And if you could just share like how it was like working with these different leaders.
I've had quite a range of experiences working in the army, then in the Air Force, and in MINDEF, different ministries, dealing with artists, with diplomats, with doctors, with economists, with foreigners. Then I was in the private sector, then I worked for the Holy Father. In the end, they are not all that different because they're dealing with human beings. They are trying to persuade one another to go about common undertakings. You have to worry for yourself, you have to worry for others. We're all selfish, but if you're only selfish, it's self-destructive. You also have to help others and help yourself thereby. So looking back, which I did in my musings, there is the non-human world, which we are part of, which is our crucible. Then we've got to understand it. The inanimate world, the biological world. Then there are human beings. And what does it mean to interact with other human beings? And encourage one another. And therefore, create everywhere we are a win-win outcome. A positive qi. So I've been doing Tai Chi and practicing a form of Qigong for a very long time. And no one's alone. We exist in an environment with which we must be in harmony, and we're in a human field. And it is affected by lighting, by temperature, by humidity, by everything. And does that field make us more human, more inspired, or does it dampen us? And wherever you are, try to add to the environment. Don't drag it down. In any interaction, be positive.
There was something you mentioned earlier about your interaction with Pope Francis when you asked him to bless the rosaries, right? Which I'm kind of curious about. The thing he said to you was, "Please pray for me," right?
Yes.
What do you think that illustrates about how he is as a leader and how he is as a person?
When someone asks you to pray for him, you're not sure whether he means it genuinely or whether it's just an affected humility. So it takes time to assess the sincerity of a person. And if you are a pope, you are a president, you are a famous person, you have many layers. And it's important to be skeptical. Is a person really nice? Did he really mean what he say? Well, it will reveal itself over time. Pope Francis, if I may go back to him, initially a priest told me who worked in the Vatican, he's very cunning, which is not surprising to me because you're working in a very complicated environment, an Italian environment. He's a foreigner in that environment. So if you're not cunning, how can you be a pope? If you're not cunning, how can you be a leader of a country? A few years later, that same person told me, he said, this man is holy. He's genuinely holy. Now, normally when you assess a person, you may be infatuated. You say, oh, well, what a wonderful person, what a clever person.
Yeah.
After a while, you get jaded. Oh, well, you begin to notice the defects, the deficiencies. But for him, over a few years, to come to the conclusion that he's not only cunning, but he's genuinely holy, to me says a lot about Pope Francis. So that's how we evaluate people. Not just one or two occasions, but over time. Then who are we? I mean, how long are we on earth? Well, for you, your life expectancy is probably 100.
Ooh. Congrats.
But we must all die.
Yeah.
So for that brief moment in time, which is nothing in cosmic time, some atoms come together to make you, and then it becomes ash. It becomes atomized again. So during that brief moment, when you're Drew or Priest or Alfie, how has the world changed? And that's the meaning of life. And that meaning is not found in ourselves, but in how others relate to us, which means in our contribution, in how we have changed others. And we must all hope and pray that our positive contributions will outweigh our negative contributions. So when the ultimate balance sheet is drawn up, it's is positive and not negative.
Yeah. Okay, we have one last question to do before Mr. Yeo has to go. And I think this one will be right up your alley. This one is from viewer Vic. Vic writes, I have a week plus to go on a trip at the end of the year. I'm looking for something different, not the usual Tokyo or Bangkok trip that most Singaporeans do. Any recommendations? Any recommendations, Mr. Yeo? Somewhere off the beaten path.
I've probably traveled more than most people. When I was young, in my geography classes, I was always fascinated by South America.
Okay.
And wanted to visit South America. But it was too expensive to go from Singapore. I remember once checking a tour, it was $6,000. It's ridiculous. It's just too far. Then I was in business school in Harvard, in Boston, and we got married. My wife and I got married there. From there to South America was cheap. So we went for a honeymoon in South America for 2 weeks.
Which part?
Oh, we started in Rio de Janeiro, went to Buenos Aires, then to Santiago, Arica, which is in the Atacama Desert, then to La Paz, Cusco, Machu Picchu, Lima, back.
Okay.
Traveling
The grand
for,
tour.
well, very short, very rushed. High inflation. In Bolivia, it was 8,000%. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
I changed $50. It was not legal. The guy took my money, went around a street corner, came back with a brown paper bag of cash. And someone said that the rate of inflation was only capped by the number of flights bringing in fresh banknotes from Thomas de la Rue, the mint in London, to Bolivia.
Yeah.
8,000%. So there's no profit in honest work. It's in playing the market. This is how destructive inflation is, especially hyperinflation. But it was very interesting. Till today, I go back, I think through what we went through. You learn so much by travel.
Yeah.
But you must be interested in people. If all you're interested is in a slope for skiing, well, then you have very specific requirements. So you want to go hiking or swimming or whatever. But to me, the most interesting part of travel is watching human society and how they're different. You go to India, the cacophony, the disorder hits you.
Yeah.
But after 2-3 days, you get into the rhythm. And then the other flavors come out. Then you enjoy India. So I've been to India so many times. For 10 years, I was involved in reviving the old Nalanda University in Bihar, one of India's poorest states. And to get there from Patna was a 2 to 3 hour car ride through desperately poor rural areas. But I could see over the years how lives improve, how the animals have become fatter and furrier, how the saris are, the colors have come back, how the shops are now more filled with fruits and produce and so on. I've been to Iceland twice. Small communities, the average Icelander knows his ancestors up 6 generations. They wrote the Nordic sagas. So even though a small population, they have a very deep sense of themselves. I go to China often, I go to Swatow often. They were so poor before. Now Shantou, I was just there 2 weeks ago, it's cleaner than Singapore. And unlike here where we have rubbish bins every 10 meters, there are not so many in China. So there's more discipline. I once joked to Kishore that Singapore is not clean. Singapore is always cleaned. Which is not a good sign. And when you travel and see other societies, then you realize, no, these are your own strengths, but these are also your weaknesses in comparison and contrast. So my interest is no longer in seeing mountains and beaches, but in observing human society. And I always remember what Lee Kuan Yew once said to us in cabinet. He said, there's no paradise on earth. It's what we make of it. If you're well organized, the place is safe, their facilities, a little patch can be fantastic. But you can have the most wondrous physical landscape. But if the place is chaotic, you are not safe, if people are killing one another, it's hell in paradise.
Wow, wow. Chris, what's the next trip you're planning on taking?
I actually don't know, so I might be in Vic's position.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think hearing from you, like, you know, traveling is more than just looking at the location or just what the country has to offer in terms of like geography. So there are more to that, and like, you know, people watching is quite interesting. I haven't actually heard anyone that actually travels to really observe the people. So if you could choose just one place in the world where you think that the people are interesting to observe, and also perhaps the food or the location,
The
also.
cultural
Yeah, the
things.
cultural place.
One place, one destination.
Where would it be?
The reason why I don't have a quick answer is because I have difficulty in giving you an honest, short answer. To me, the Vatican was fascinating. I don't know Rome, but I know the Vatican. And I know its history and why it is the longest surviving organization in the world. I'm always emotionally engaged when I go back to my ancestral hometown in China. Because my mother came from there, we're relatives there. The ancestral temple is there. When I first went there, it was desperately poor and filthy. And I watched over the years how things have improved. But Shantou is behind many other cities in China. The Teochews go outside Shantou to make money in Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and elsewhere. But when they go back, it's a serene environment. And the food is always good. I never have a bad meal in Shantou. So it depends on what you're looking for. In Southeast Asia, Malaysia is an extension of Singapore because we were one people in two countries. I don't know whether you're originally Malaysian. You do not know whether Alfie is originally Malaysian because we're that close to one another. Indonesia, I tell many people, it's my favorite country. I probably, when I was in government, went to Indonesia more than any other country because it's important to us. I like the way they treat one another. Different stations, but it's always Pa, Ibu,
Yes.
a certain courtesy, which may not be completely sincere, but it guides their conduct. I like the food, I like warm weather. But you know the worry, we like durians. Now the Chinese like durians. So Mao Shang-wang is going to become more expensive this year.
One of my colleagues quipped that he's always happy when he sees Chinese people eating Thai durians.
Yes,
Because it leaves the better durians for the rest of us. Yeah.
But they are catching up.
Yeah.
They're rising up, you know. Yeah. But Indonesia is probably the most important country to Singapore.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. And we should understand it.
Chris's parents are from Indonesia.
Yeah, I'm from Indonesia actually.
Yeah.
To me, it's vast, it's fascinating. And as China becomes more middle class, they don't like the cold weather. The Americans move to Florida, then to the Caribbean, to Mexico. The Europeans move to Turkey and the Middle East. The Chinese will move to Indonesia.
Wow, okay.
And we'll be jacking up prices, but then there'll be better facilities.
So maybe some investment tips there from Mr. Yeo. Alfie, one place that you would like to travel to or that you would recommend?
I mean, I just traveled to New York over the summer, and I love.
Did you like New York?
I love New York. I went on my first like solo trip in New York, and I loved it. Like I just went to the museums. I met a couple of ex-colleagues there. I watched like 3 plays. It was just very chill. I went to Central Park and took photos of people. That was nice as well. So I actually went on my own people watching.
The thing about New York is that everywhere you go, you feel like you're in a movie because it looks
really
so
does
familiar
feel-
from the movies that we've seen.
Yeah.
One place that I would recommend to go to, Mr. Yeo has mentioned it already, but like India. I really like India. I think I might go again this year.
Oh, which parts of India did you visit?
I've been to Kolkata, Varanasi, New Delhi, Rajasthan, Mumbai. So far.
Why do you like India?
I was fascinated with the history of it. I read this book by called The Anarchy, which was about the British East India Company, and that whole, how they kind of took over the country, and then subsequently like what happened when they did, and that those kind of things fascinated me about it, and then when I started reading about the older history of India, things like Buddha, and the different kings that they had, or emperors that they had rather, and I just found it really interesting. I don't know, so much of it is really interesting. I like the food. I like the chaos. I like that there is still, that you still see people living their lives the way they might have lived their life like 20, 30 years ago. I mean, that sounds a bit like poverty porn, but to me it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, like kind of a sense of genuineness, I suppose. Authenticity is the word, I guess, to the way that life goes about there. Yeah. I don't know. I just find it, I like the chaos as well, and the adventure of it.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think my favorite place in India would be Kolkata, and then after that I would recommend Rajasthan, I think. Yeah. I'm sure you've been to both those areas.
Yes. I've been to India many times. Many times.
Do you have a favorite city in India? A favorite place to visit in India?
Well, Rajasthan is always...
It's beautiful.
Beautiful. I've been to Jaipur, Jodhpur, Udaipur, and always fascinated by how when they sing, somehow the music carries further in the desert air. It's almost haunting and hypnotic. Calcutta has improved a lot. I went to the Chinatown there, which is almost in ruins.
Yeah.
It once had a big Chinese population. I would like to go to the mountains.
Okay.
To the foothills of the Himalayas.
Yeah.
But never had the chance. Only did so in Bhutan. But which is a very different culture because of Tibetan Buddhism. No, it's good to enjoy a place for what it is. I always read up before I visit a place to know its history, its culture.
Yeah.
And sometimes the reality disappoints because you've read up in advance.
Yeah.
So you're no longer as impressed when you see the Taj Mahal, because if you read all about the Taj Mahal, then you realize that many things are not as big as you thought, because the Mughals were very clever in creating an optical illusion of things even bigger than what they are until you put a human being alongside. Then you realize that, it's not a big lawn, but a smallish lawn, but the proportions are sized to create an illusion of scale. Yeah. But then you realize, that's a Mughal specialty. And then you go deeper, then it opens up new universes.
Yeah, wow. Okay, I think that is all that we have time for. Monsieur has a lunch appointment that we want to let him get to. But thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you had a fun time answering these questions and telling us about the Pope.
No, thank you for indulging me. I think I don't... I think I'm not your conventional interviewee who will give short, crisp, clever answers.
No, I love it. I feel like there's so many pearls of wisdom. We can go back and listen to this and absorb even more in the future. That's all we have for this episode. Thank you, Audio Technica, for powering the audio for this episode of Help Desk. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.